Hello, here we are at week 5. This is going to be a much briefer overview. First, I do want to make a comment or two on the discussions. Very good work on the discussions. One thing in particular that I really appreciated in looking at the discussion question for, I believe it was week 3, where we were talking about what treatment approach spoke to you. What I was really pleased to see is that most people commented, no matter what the approach was that spoke to them, the one thing that a lot of people commented on was that it was all about fitting the treatment to the person. And that is one of the most important things to take away from this class, is that when we are doing treatment, we have got to fit that treatment to the person, because if you try to fit the person to the treatment, it really just does not work. It's like that old thing about trying to put the round peg into the square hole. So I was very pleased to see that people got the idea that it is important that we meet the person where they're at and use that treatment to give them the result that they want. And again, it's great if along the way they change what it is that they want, because as you know more, as you experience more, as you feel more things, it makes sense that you might want to change what your goals are. So I felt like you guys really have gotten that. And that's one of the main points I'd like you to take from this class. I am not doing a discussion question this week because I do want you to be able to concentrate on the motivational interviewing paper, which is due by Saturday evening on the 4th of July by 11:59 p.m. So be sure you get that in, because that is going to be a large part of your grade. You may have noticed that I have put up a study guide for the final exam. I think in the week 7 or the week 6, I'm not sure which it is, but it's in one of those 2 weeks. And if you look, you'll see a study guide for the final exam. The final exam will be multiple choice and true-false questions, and you will have 3 chances to take the test, with the highest score being the one that gets posted. We will have a discussion question again next week, and then the week after that we will not have a discussion question, because that will be the week when you'll be doing the final exam, because even though we've just started the semester, it is soon going to be over. So I want to not have you overwhelmed, because I know a number of you may be taking other classes along with this one. So just a little brief thing on chapter 11, do the reading. But the one thing that I think is important, when we start talking about ethnicity, culture, particularly, we have to be careful that we don't start getting into stereotyping, because no culture is monolithic. There's no, just as treatment isn't a one-size-fits-all thing, neither is ethnicity or culture. I grew up in a blue-collar family in the projects of Baltimore. Even growing up, I had very little in common with my family, even though we had the same genetics, and I looked just like my father, so there's no doubt about that. I had the same genetics, and we had the same social upbringing, but I was very different from just the rest of my family. So as you can imagine, that people might be very different within a culture, and depending on a number of things. And one of those things that is part of it is the socioeconomic aspect of it. Does race and ethnicity and culture play a part? You know, it certainly can make it more difficult to gain in socioeconomic status when you're part of a minority group. You know, the deck tends to be a bit stacked against you. But the fact of the matter is that people who have a higher socioeconomic background are more likely to have better education. They have been able to perhaps get their education, go on to higher education, not only not getting bogged down by student loans, but having the money to be able to just get an education without having to work or worry about raising a family, things like that. So it's good to understand various cultures. We certainly need to be accepting of varying cultures. We need to understand the individual's culture, because the individual may have a culture that is influenced by the larger culture, but is still unique to them in the way they view it, the way they express it. So we want to be very careful when we talk about things like ethnicity and culture, that we avoid getting into a stereotyping thing. So that's the main point I want to make on this chapter. Of course, do the reading, continue working on the motivational interviewing paper, get it in by the end of Saturday, July 4th, and have a good holiday weekend, and I will talk to you again next week. Take care.